Have you ever found yourself staring at an unfinished goal, wondering why some people seem to accomplish so much while you struggle just to get started? What if I told you the difference isn't talent or luck, but something entirely within your control? Welcome back to another life-changing discussion. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Today, we're diving deep into what Neville Goddard and the world's most accomplished individuals understand about discipline, the invisible force that separates dreams from achievement. Has this ever happened to you? You set an ambitious goal, feel incredibly motivated for a few days, then watch that motivation fade like morning mist, leaving you right back where you started. The truth most people never realize is that discipline isn't some magical gift bestowed upon a lucky few. It's a command, a directive you give yourself and then refuse to disobey. When you wait for motivation to strike before taking action, you've already surrendered your power. The disciplined individual doesn't negotiate with feelings. They act regardless of them, understanding that achievement requires consistency beyond emotional states. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Your mind is quite literally a battlefield. Within it rages a constant war between your disciplined self and the part of you that craves comfort above all else. Each thought tempting you toward ease rather than growth is like an enemy soldier in this mental war. And here's the critical insight: these thoughts cannot be negotiated with or reasoned away. They must be defeated through immediate, decisive action. Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you exactly how to command your mind rather than be commanded by it. Every day you postpone taking meaningful action, your dreams deteriorate further. The gap between who you are and who you could become grows wider. And it's not because you lack ability, it's because you haven't yet mastered the art of self-command. Think about the last time you felt that inner resistance, that voice suggesting you could do it tomorrow or that you deserve a break. In those moments, you stood at a critical crossroads that would determine your future more powerfully than any external circumstance ever could. The most successful people in history weren't free from this inner battle. They simply developed superior strategies for winning it. And today, we're going to explore the exact methods they used to transform discipline from their greatest struggle into their most powerful advantage. The techniques I'm about to share have helped countless individuals break through barriers they once thought impossible. If you found value in these principles of discipline, hit that subscribe button to join thousands of others on this journey of self-mastery. Let me share something transformative that changed my entire approach to personal growth. The hidden truth about discipline isn't just about pushing yourself through difficult moments. It's about engineering your life in such a way that failure becomes nearly impossible. Think of it as building an impenetrable fortress around your most important commitments. The real journey begins when you establish habits so deeply ingrained that no external circumstance, not a bad day, not unexpected challenges, not even a global crisis, can disrupt them. These habits become your armor, protecting your progress when everything else falls apart. This is where the real mindset shift occurs. When your body signals exhaustion during that final set at the gym, discipline doesn't negotiate. It simply demands one more repetition. When your mind begs for a delay on that crucial project, discipline doesn't entertain the thought. It insists on immediate action. This isn't about motivation. It's about creating an automatic response system that operates independently of how you feel in any given moment. What's fascinating about this internal framework is how it reveals itself during life's most challenging moments. The decisions you make when you're tired, stressed, or discouraged are the ones that truly define your trajectory. Anyone can stay disciplined. When energized and inspired, the revelation comes in what you do when every fiber of your being resists taking action. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing something that silently sabotages most people's progress. Many individuals spend an extraordinary amount of mental and emotional energy explaining their lack of achievement, justifying their shortcomings, and rationalizing their inconsistency. These explanations aren't harmless. They're the very mechanism through which personal power is surrendered. Each time you entertain an excuse, whether it's about not having enough time, lacking resources, or waiting for perfect conditions, you're actively participating in your own limitation. The impact of this habit compounds over time, creating a pattern where explanation becomes a substitute for execution. The disciplined individual refuses this pattern entirely. They understand a fundamental truth that transforms their approach. You are forged through struggle, built for resistance, and designed to direct your own destiny. There is no secret formula beyond doing what must be done, regardless of how you feel about it in the moment. This realization creates an almost shocking level of personal accountability. When you stop entertaining weakness, you reclaim the authority over your life that you may have unknowingly given away. You begin to see that behind every excuse lies a choice to surrender or to advance despite discomfort. The behind-the-scenes reality of every exceptional achievement is this unwavering commitment to action over explanation. It's never been about having supernatural abilities or perfect circumstances. It's about refusing to negotiate with the part of yourself that seeks comfort above growth. What emerges from this approach is a form of personal integrity that becomes your greatest asset. You begin to trust yourself because your actions align with your commitments. The internal conflict that plagues most people, the constant battle between what they say they want and what they actually do, begins to dissolve. If what I'm sharing resonates with your own experience, write "no more excuses" in the comments. Now let's explore how this foundation of uncompromising discipline creates a domino effect in every area of your life. This domino effect begins with a profound revelation that most people never experience. Discipline isn't a form of punishment. It's the purest expression of personal power you'll ever discover. Society has conditioned us to view discipline as restriction, as something that limits our freedom and enjoyment. This fundamental misunderstanding creates a blueprint for mediocrity that's almost impossible to escape. When you reframe discipline as power rather than punishment, an extraordinary transformation occurs in your approach to challenges. The individual who masters discipline ultimately masters life itself. Think about the most influential figures in history. What separated them wasn't merely talent or circumstance, but their capacity to remain consistent when everyone else faltered. Unlike motivation, which flares brightly but burns out quickly, discipline functions as a sustainable fire that never extinguishes. This distinction represents the cornerstone of lasting achievement. Motivation depends entirely on fleeting emotional states. It disappears when your mood shifts or energy declines. But discipline stands unwavering even as circumstances deteriorate around you. The revelation that changed my entire journey was understanding that discipline isn't just about current actions. It's about honoring an invisible contract with your future self. Every decision you make today either strengthens or weakens this contract. Each time you choose immediate comfort over meaningful progress, you're essentially breaking a promise to the person you've committed to becoming. This perspective illuminates why discipline represents the highest form of self-respect. It demonstrates that you trust your vision enough to endure temporary discomfort for profound long-term fulfillment. Most people abandon their aspirations at the first sign of difficulty, but behind the scenes of every remarkable achievement lies this unwavering commitment to honoring the contract with your future self. What fascinates me about this journey is how the universe tests your resolve. Contrary to what most expect, commitment isn't rewarded with immediate progress. It's tested through resistance. When you declare your intention to transform, life doesn't instantly become easier. It presents obstacles specifically designed to reveal the depth of your commitment. These moments of resistance serve as the crucible where your character is forged. They reveal whether your decisions are driven by fleeting desire or genuine dedication. The paradox is that the obstacles themselves contain the very ingredients necessary for your evolution. They aren't blocking your path. They are the path. Most people interpret resistance as evidence they should abandon their course, but those who understand this hidden truth recognize resistance as confirmation they're moving in precisely the right direction. It's through navigating these challenging terrains that you develop the mental fortitude and adaptability that ultimately become your greatest assets. The mindset shift occurs when you begin to welcome resistance rather than avoid it. You recognize that comfort and growth cannot coexist, and you make peace with the necessary discomfort that accompanies meaningful advancement. This isn't about embracing suffering for its own sake. It's about understanding that temporary discomfort is the price of admission to an extraordinary life. If this perspective has shifted something within you today, write "I honor the contract" in the comments. Now let's explore what happens when you embrace discipline not as an occasional practice, but as a fundamental identity. When you embrace discipline as a fundamental identity, something fascinating happens. You begin to notice how the universe responds to genuine commitment. This is where most people get tripped up in their personal evolution. They expect that once they declare their intention to change, the path should immediately clear before them. Obstacles should dissolve, and progress should flow effortlessly. Subscribe now to continue exploring these transformative ideas about discipline, self-control, and personal power that can fundamentally change your approach to achievement. The reality couldn't be more different. When you make that declaration to transform your life, the universe doesn't reward you with immediate success. It presents you with resistance. This resistance manifests as challenges, long hours working without recognition, isolation from those who don't understand your vision, and a profound lack of external validation during the early stages of your journey. This is the critical juncture where most people abandon their path, misinterpreting these challenges as signs they're moving in the wrong direction. But the enlightened few recognize these obstacles for what they truly are: a cosmic testing ground designed to reveal the depth of your commitment. During these testing periods, discipline becomes your most loyal companion, the invisible force propelling you forward when every emotion screams to retreat. The awakening comes when you realize these periods of resistance aren't punishing you, they're preparing you. They're forging the mental fortitude, resilience, and clarity that become your greatest assets once you break through to the other side. The roadblocks aren't preventing your breakthrough. They're creating the conditions necessary for it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing the fundamental miscalculation most people make when pursuing significant achievements. We live in a culture that glorifies ideas, visions, and intentions, but remains largely silent about the unglamorous work of consistent execution. This creates a dangerous illusion that breakthrough moments happen through inspiration rather than implementation. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that the world doesn't reward thoughts, it rewards results. Everyone has dreams and desires, but precious few possess the strength to consistently execute on their vision without constant emotional reinforcement. Ideas without implementation remain forever in the realm of fantasy, regardless of how brilliant they might be. Discipline forms the essential bridge connecting your abstract ideas to tangible outcomes. It's the daily decision to show up, to refine your craft, to solve problems, and to advance your mission, especially when no one is watching, when no external rewards are immediately apparent. The disciplined person builds in silence, often for years, before the world takes notice. This perspective shift transforms how you approach each day. You stop seeking validation for your intentions and start demanding results from your actions. You recognize that momentum isn't built through periodic bursts of inspiration, but through the accumulated power of consistent execution. The compound effect of showing up day after day creates an unstoppable force that no single obstacle can withstand. If you've recognized this pattern in your own journey, the gap between knowing and doing, write "execution matters most" in the comments. Now let's explore what happens when you reach the point where discipline transcends effort and becomes your natural state of being. When you reach the point where discipline transcends effort and becomes your natural state, you discover one of life's most profound revelations. True discipline bears almost no resemblance to the way it's portrayed in popular culture. Behind the scenes of every remarkable achievement lies a reality that's surprisingly unglamorous. Discipline isn't photogenic. It doesn't make for compelling social media content. It's not a montage of inspiring moments set to powerful music. The authentic journey of discipline is repetitive, often monotonous, and frequently conducted in complete solitude. It's the novelist who writes every morning before dawn for years before publishing their first book. It's the entrepreneur who refines their business model through countless iterations while no one is watching. It's the athlete who performs the same fundamental movements thousands of times when the stadium is empty. What's fascinating about this unglamorous consistency is that it forms the fertile soil from which all extraordinary achievement eventually grows. The transformation happens not through sporadic bursts of inspiration, but through the compound effect of showing up day after day, especially when you don't feel like it. Waiting for motivation is essentially surrendering your power to unpredictable emotional states, a recipe for perpetual inconsistency. The watershed moment in your evolution occurs when you stop seeing discipline as something you do and start recognizing it as something you are. This represents the ultimate alchemy, when consistency is no longer something you chase, but simply becomes your identity. You don't debate whether you'll show up. Showing up is just what you do. It's as natural as breathing. Every significant journey inevitably reaches a critical juncture where the initial excitement fades, leaving only determination in its place. The honeymoon phase ends, the dopamine rush of beginning something new dissipates, and you're left facing the long road ahead without the emotional fuel that launched you forward. This is precisely where most people abandon their path, mistakenly concluding that their struggle indicates they're on the wrong track, that it wasn't meant to be. The disciplined person recognizes this moment for what it truly is. Not an ending, but a beginning. This is where the real journey starts, where superficial commitment gets separated from genuine dedication. They remain steadfast even when conditions are uncomfortable, understanding that the process isn't punishment, but purification. Each repetition, each challenging day, each moment of showing up when motivation is absent, these are the very elements that forge extraordinary capability. What emerges on the other side of this transition is something remarkable, a version of yourself that operates from a completely different paradigm. You no longer require external validation to maintain momentum. You no longer need perfect conditions to produce quality work. You no longer depend on feeling ready or inspired to take meaningful action. You've transcended the need for these emotional crutches because discipline has become woven into the fabric of your identity. If you've experienced this transition, or recognize you're currently in the challenging middle phase where excitement has faded but identity hasn't fully formed, write "becoming discipline" in the comments. Now let's examine what happens when you begin to understand discipline not as restriction, but as the ultimate form of purification. When you begin to understand discipline as purification rather than punishment, a profound revelation occurs. What feels like struggle is actually refinement. This shift in perspective transforms your relationship with difficult moments. Entirely, the resistance you encounter isn't working against you, it's working for you, burning away weakness and forging strength with each repetition. Think of discipline as fire. It doesn't destroy indiscriminately, it purifies selectively. The heat and pressure that feel uncomfortable are precisely the elements causing transformation at the deepest level. Just as gold must endure the furnace to reveal its true brilliance, your potential must endure consistent pressure to manifest fully in the world. Each challenge you face, each early morning when your body resists rising, each decision point where comfort beckons loudly, these moments aren't punishing you, they're refining you. They're removing the elements of your character that prevent you from becoming who you're meant to be. The pain of discipline isn't destruction, it's creation in its most profound form. What separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who remain ordinary isn't some innate advantage. It's their relationship with this purification process. Where most see pain to be avoided, the disciplined person sees necessary refinement. Where most negotiate with excuses, the disciplined person silences them completely, recognizing them as the very elements that must be burned away. True advancement doesn't emerge from emotional highs or occasional inspiration. It comes from commanding yourself forward, regardless of feeling. This command is the catalyst for the inner alchemy that transforms intention into result, potential into achievement, vision into reality. It's the force that burns away everything inessential, leaving only what serves your highest purpose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of discipline. It isn't built during your strongest moments, but during your weakest ones. This revelation contradicts everything we're taught about personal development. We mistakenly believe discipline is developed when we're feeling motivated, energized, and strong. The truth, discipline is forged precisely when you feel weakest, most resistant, and least inclined to continue. The moments that truly shape your character are those when you force yourself forward despite exhaustion, continue creating despite feeling uninspired, and maintain standards despite being unobserved. These are the crucibles where genuine transformation occurs. Anyone can perform when conditions are ideal. The disciplined person performs regardless of conditions. Each time you push beyond what feels comfortable, you're training your spirit to follow your commands rather than your feelings. This creates an internal hierarchy where purpose governs emotion rather than the reverse. Over time, this hierarchy becomes so established that resistance loses its power to deter you. You still feel the resistance. You simply no longer obey it. The journey toward mastery is paved with these moments of choosing command over comfort. Each decision point represents a fork in the road, one path leading to immediate relief and long-term limitation, the other to temporary discomfort and eventual freedom. The disciplined person consistently chooses the second path, understanding that temporary discomfort is the admission price to extraordinary achievement. If you've experienced these moments of pushing through resistance and felt the strength that emerges on the other side, write "forged in fire" in the comments. Now, Let's explore what happens when this purification process creates something remarkable within you, a level of self-mastery that transforms your relationship with the world around you. This purification process ultimately leads to something truly transformative, a level of self-mastery that fundamentally changes how the world responds to you. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying history's most influential figures is that self-mastery represents the ultimate form of achievement. It's not just another skill, it's the foundation upon which all other successes are built. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that the world naturally gravitates toward those who have mastered their emotions, impulses, and actions. There's something magnetically powerful about someone who demonstrates complete self-command. Leaders, innovators, and pioneers throughout history share this common thread. Before they conquered external challenges, they first conquered themselves. What's particularly illuminating about this journey is understanding where your true battleground lies. Your greatest enemies aren't external circumstances, competitive forces, or limited resources. They're internal adversaries, disguised as comfort, laziness that whispers, "Do it tomorrow," distraction that fragments your focus, self-doubt that undermines your potential. These internal forces have derailed more dreams than any external obstacle ever could. Discipline becomes your most powerful weapon in this internal warfare. It's the sword that cuts through excuses, the shield that deflects distraction, the armor that protects your purpose from the constant assault of comfort. Each time you choose discipline over immediate gratification, you win another battle in this ongoing campaign for self-mastery. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing perhaps the most crucial decision you'll ever make, a decision most people never consciously recognize. Life inevitably presents you with pain in one of two forms, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. There is no third option. There is no painless path to extraordinary achievement. The question isn't whether you'll experience pain. The question is which pain you'll choose. The pain of discipline is front-loaded. It's immediate, intense, but ultimately temporary. It's the discomfort of rising early, working when exhausted, saying no to distractions, and pushing beyond perceived limitations. This pain strengthens you with each encounter, building capacity, resilience, and capability that compound over time. The pain of regret, however, is backloaded. It begins as comfort, the temporary relief of avoidance, the momentary pleasure of distraction, the immediate ease of saying not today. But this comfort transforms into a weight that grows heavier with each passing year. It manifests as the quiet desperation of unfulfilled potential, the haunting awareness of what could have been, the sobering realization of dreams permanently deferred. Disciplined individuals make a profound decision early in their journey. They choose their pain proactively. They embrace difficult work now, understanding that this temporary discomfort is actually an investment that pays dividends for decades. They recognize that by accepting the pain of discipline today, they secure freedom from the pain of regret tomorrow. Those who avoid immediate discomfort ultimately pay with something far more precious, the lifetime suffering of knowing they could have become something extraordinary, but chose momentary ease instead. This awareness becomes a shadow that follows them, growing longer and darker with each passing year. If this perspective on pain resonates with you, this understanding that pain isn't something to avoid, but something to choose wisely, write "choose pain wisely" in the comments. Now, let's explore how this deliberate choice creates something most people spend their entire lives searching for, the unshakable confidence that comes only from keeping promises to yourself. This unshakable confidence emerges from a profound understanding of how the universe actually operates. One of the most liberating revelations on my journey was recognizing that the universe runs on unbreakable principles, principles that cannot be negotiated with, manipulated, or bypassed. You either invest effort now or pay with failure later. There is no shortcut, no hack, no secret technique that allows you to circumvent this fundamental equation. Think of discipline as your down payment on future success. Each disciplined action, each workout completed, each page written, each skill refined, etches your name deeper into your destiny. Conversely, each moment of laziness, each surrender to distraction, each compromise with mediocrity gradually erases it. The universe keeps impeccable accounts of these transactions, and the balance is always reflected in your results. What's particularly illuminating about this journey is how it strips away the illusion that many people spend decades chasing, the illusion of perfect conditions. The transformation begins when you accept that perfect conditions never arrive. The perfect time to start doesn't exist. The ideal circumstances won't materialize. The moment of complete readiness is a fantasy. Action must begin despite imperfection, uncertainty, and limitation, because these elements never fully disappear. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement isn't found in waiting for ideal conditions, but in maximizing whatever conditions currently exist. The disciplined individual doesn't require perfect circumstances to produce quality work. They create quality regardless of circumstance. This capability represents one of the most powerful competitive advantages you can develop, because most people remain perpetually waiting for conditions that never arrive. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing something that fundamentally changed my perspective on daily decisions. Behind every choice you make today stands a silent witness, your future self. This isn't some abstract concept, but a profound reality that, once internalized, transforms your approach to every decision. Every action you take, or avoid, is observed by the person you're becoming. This perspective illuminates why discipline isn't ultimately about motivation or even accomplishment. It's about honoring your own vision through consistent action. It's about keeping the promises you make to yourself with the same integrity you'd keep promises made to someone you deeply respect. Each time you follow through on a commitment, you build trust with your future self. Each time you surrender to comfort, you erode that trust. The journey requires sacrifice. There's no avoiding this reality. It costs comfort, leisure, and sometimes sleep. It demands saying no to immediate pleasures that most readily embrace. But what it provides in return are the ultimate rewards, personal power that cannot be taken from you, and freedom that isn't dependent on external circumstances. When you can reliably command yourself, when your word to yourself becomes unbreakable, external forces lose their influence over you. What emerges from this practice is a form of sovereignty that few ever experience. You become impervious to manipulation because you no longer make decisions based primarily on comfort. You develop immunity to distraction because your commitment to purpose outweighs momentary interest. You transcend the need for constant validation because you derive confidence from your relationship with your future self. If this perspective resonates with you, this understanding that your future self witnesses every decision you make today, write "My future self is watching" in the comments. Now let's explore how this approach to discipline creates a fascinating relationship with your emotions. Mole 1. Where you recognize them as valuable indicators but never allow them to become your master. This approach to discipline creates a revolutionary relationship with your emotions, one that completely transforms how you navigate life's challenges. Perhaps the most liberating insight on my journey was recognizing this fundamental truth of personal mastery. Your emotions should serve you rather than control you. This revelation turns the conventional understanding of motivation completely upside down. Most people live their entire lives as emotional hostages, perpetually waiting for the right feeling to arrive before taking meaningful action. They believe they must feel motivated before starting, confident before creating, or inspired before executing. This mindset creates a blueprint for permanent inconsistency because emotions, by their very nature, are unpredictable and constantly shifting. The decisive moment in your evolution comes when you realize that emotions provide valuable energy and information, but they make terrible masters. When allowed to dictate your actions, they inevitably lead to a scattered existence characterized by brilliant starts and abandoned projects. The disciplined individual doesn't ignore emotions, but establishes a clear hierarchy where purpose commands emotion rather than being commanded by it. What's particularly illuminating about this mindset shift is recognizing the temporary nature of all emotional states. They constantly fluctuate based on external circumstances, opinions of others, physical conditions, sleep quality, nutrition, and countless other variables beyond your control. True power belongs to the person who acts with authority over these emotional fluctuations, rather than submitting to their constant shifts. The enlightened approach isn't suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's acknowledging them fully while simultaneously refusing to grant them decision-making authority. Emotions may protest loudly when you begin a challenging task, but the disciplined mind observes these protests without automatically obeying them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what happens behind the scenes in the minds of those who achieve extraordinary results. They develop what I call emotional sovereignty, the ability to experience emotions fully without being controlled by them. This sovereignty creates a foundation for consistency that's impossible to achieve when decisions are primarily emotion-driven. Think about the breakthrough moments in your own journey, the times when you pushed through resistance despite not feeling like it. What you were actually demonstrating in those moments was this precise sovereignty. You were proving to yourself that actions can precede emotions rather than always following them. This revelation completely inverts the traditional motivation equation. Instead of waiting to feel motivated before acting, you act first, and the motivation follows. Instead of requiring inspiration before creating, you create first, and the inspiration emerges through the process. This approach liberates you from the tyranny of emotional dependency. You no longer need perfect emotional alignment to produce quality work because you've developed the capacity to function at a high level, regardless of emotional state. The transformation occurs when you stop treating motivation as a prerequisite for action and start recognizing it as a natural byproduct of action. This shift creates a perpetual cycle of momentum that doesn't depend on fleeting emotional states. You develop an internal engine that continues functioning smoothly even when external conditions are challenging. If you've experienced this powerful reversal, this ability to act despite emotional resistance, write "emotions serve me" in the comments. Now let's explore how this emotional mastery creates something even more valuable, the ability to maintain clarity and purpose even when surrounded by chaos. This emotional mastery creates something truly remarkable, a clarity of purpose that persists even amidst life's inevitable chaos. What's fascinating about emotions is that they weren't designed to be eliminated or suppressed. They were designed to inform you, not govern you. This subtle distinction represents one of the most profound mindset shifts on the journey toward extraordinary achievement. When properly channeled, emotions become powerful tools rather than limiting constraints. Anger, which typically derails most people, can be transformed into fierce determination when properly directed. Fear, which paralyzes the average person, can sharpen your awareness and heighten your focus when properly utilized. The enlightenment comes not from removing emotions, but from redirecting their energy toward your highest purpose. The revelation that changed my entire perspective was recognizing that emotions, left unmanaged, inevitably become destructive forces regardless of their initial nature. Even seemingly positive emotions like excitement or inspiration can become limitations when allowed to dictate your actions, because they're inherently inconsistent. The person who cannot effectively regulate emotional states will never fully direct their destiny, remaining perpetually at the mercy of these internal fluctuations. What's particularly illuminating about this understanding is how it explains the pattern of abandoned commitments that characterizes most people's lives. Think about the instances when you've quit something important, a fitness routine, a creative project, a personal development practice. If you trace these moments back to their origin, you'll discover they typically began with surrendering to temporary emotional states rather than honoring your larger purpose. The blueprint for inconsistency is revealed in seemingly innocent statements. "I don't feel like it today," or "I'll do it tomorrow," or "I'm not in the right headspace right now." These phrases represent emotion claiming authority over your decisions, a subtle coup d'etat where temporary feelings overthrow your long-term vision. This surrender, repeated over time, inevitably creates a life of scattered potential and unrealized dreams. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the hidden architecture behind emotional mastery. The disciplined individual develops the capacity to observe emotions without automatically obeying them. They create what I call decision space, a momentary pause between feeling an emotion and acting upon it. This space, though often just seconds long, is where personal power resides. In this decision space, you reclaim your authority by asking a simple but transformative question: is this emotion serving my highest purpose or distracting from it? This question creates immediate clarity, revealing whether the emotion is functioning as a useful tool or attempting to become your director. The question doesn't dismiss the emotion as invalid, but evaluates its utility in the context of your larger vision. What emerges from this practice is a fascinating paradox. As you become more skilled at managing emotions rather than being managed by them, your emotional experience actually becomes richer and more nuanced. You don't become less emotional. You become more emotionally intelligent. You develop the capacity to experience emotions fully without being controlled by them, a form of emotional literacy that few ever develop. If you've experienced this transformative shift, this ability to observe your emotions without automatically acting on them, write "I create decision space" in the comments. Now, let's explore how this emotional intelligence creates a unique type of authority, the ability to command yourself with the same certainty that a general commands an army. This emotional intelligence creates a profound type of authority, one that transforms your entire relationship with life's challenges. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying history's most successful individuals is that each morning initiates an invisible battle between your purpose and your feelings. One side demands consistency and growth, the other craves comfort and ease. The victor in this daily conflict is determined not by passion or motivation, but by something far more fundamental: control. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that while you cannot eliminate emotions, nor should you try to, you can discipline them to serve rather than sabotage your goals. Think of purpose as a voice that must be amplified until it speaks louder than any temporary feeling. This isn't about shouting down your emotions, but about strengthening your connection to something more enduring than emotional states. What's particularly fascinating about this internal hierarchy is how it creates a decision-making framework that transcends momentary discomfort. When your purpose speaks louder than your feelings, the question shifts from, "Do I feel like doing this?" to, "Does this serve my larger vision?" This subtle shift completely transforms your relationship with difficult tasks, turning them from burdens to be avoided into stepping stones toward your highest aspirations. The disciplined individual develops the capacity to hear both voices, the voice of comfort and the voice of purpose, but consistently honors the latter. They recognize that feelings provide valuable information but make terrible navigational systems for a life of meaningful achievement. Purpose provides the true north that remains constant while feelings fluctuate like changing weather. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing something that fundamentally changed my understanding of personal power. Mastering emotional responses isn't emotional suppression. It's the purest form of genuine power you can develop. This mastery enables clear thinking amidst chaos, steady decision-making under pressure, and consistent action despite constantly fluctuating internal states. Think of emotional control as the calm of a lion before it attacks, focused, deliberate, and purposeful. This discipline represents concentrated power rather than weakness. The undisciplined mind reacts impulsively to every emotional impulse, scattering energy in countless directions. The disciplined mind channels emotional energy with precision, directing it exclusively toward meaningful objectives. The enlightenment comes when you recognize that emotional volatility isn't a sign of passion or authenticity. It's a form of weakness that undermines your capacity for sustained achievement. The most powerful individuals throughout history weren't those who displayed the most dramatic emotional responses. They were those who maintained composure and clarity precisely when circumstances would justify emotional chaos. What emerges from this practice is a fascinating paradox. As you develop greater emotional control, you simultaneously develop greater emotional range. You become capable of experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion without being destabilized by it. You can feel fear without being paralyzed, anger without being destructive, excitement without losing focus. This emotional literacy represents one of the most valuable capabilities you can develop. If you've experienced moments where your purpose spoke louder than your temporary feelings, where you chose the path of growth despite emotional resistance, write "purpose over feelings" in the comments. Now, let's explore how this emotional mastery creates something even more valuable. The ability to show emotions who truly commands the ship of your life. This emotional mastery ultimately creates a decisive moment of truth in your personal evolution. The ability to show your emotions who truly commands the ship of your life. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that everyone faces critical moments when everything within them screams to stop, postpone, or abandon their commitments. These pivotal instances aren't just challenging, they're defining. They reveal whether emotions or purpose ultimately controls your decisions. These moments of resistance aren't obstacles to your journey. They're actually the essence of it. They're the crossroads where most people surrender. Their authority to temporary feelings, while the disciplined few reclaim it through decisive action. Each time you act despite emotional resistance, when you complete the workout despite fatigue, continue the project despite doubt, maintain standards despite temptation, you're making a profound statement about who governs your life. The enlightenment comes when you recognize that this dynamic operates as a reinforcing cycle. Each time you act despite emotional resistance, you reclaim personal authority and strengthen your command. Conversely, each time you yield to emotion, surrendering your plans to temporary feelings, you weaken this authority and make the next surrender more likely. This cycle either builds momentum toward mastery or toward surrender. There is no neutral ground. What's particularly fascinating about this battle for control is that it isn't won through dramatic confrontation, but through consistent demonstration. You don't defeat emotional resistance by arguing with it or fighting against it. You simply act despite it. This action speaks more powerfully than any internal debate ever could. It sends a clear message about the hierarchy of authority in your life. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what I believe is the most misunderstood aspect of discipline. True discipline isn't developed during peaceful, comfortable times when everything flows easily. It's forged specifically in moments of internal conflict. It forms in the crucible of resistance when emotions demand surrender, but you advance anyway. When fear whispers warnings, but you proceed regardless. When weakness offers tempting excuses, but you persist. These challenging moments serve as the training ground where your mind learns who ultimately controls your choices. Think of them as repetitions in the gym of character development. Each repetition might be uncomfortable, but it builds strength that remains long after the discomfort fades. The disciplined individual doesn't resent these moments of conflict, but recognizes them as essential to their development. The transformation occurs when you shift from avoiding internal resistance to welcoming it as the necessary catalyst for growth. When you understand that emotional conflict isn't a sign something's wrong with your journey, but confirmation you're on the path of meaningful development. The absence of internal resistance doesn't indicate progress. It often signals stagnation, a sign you've retreated to the comfort of the familiar rather than advancing toward your potential. Behind the scenes of every extraordinary achievement lies this hidden truth. The achiever didn't find a path free from internal conflict. They developed the capacity to move forward despite it, perhaps even because of it. They recognized that discipline doesn't eliminate the battle. It wins the battle, day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment. If you've experienced these critical moments where you showed your emotions who commands the ship, where you acted with purpose despite emotional resistance, write "I command my ship" in the comments. Now let's explore how these individual moments of mastery create something even more powerful. The understanding that emotions serve as indicators rather than instructions. These individual moments of mastery collectively create one of the most profound paradigm shifts in personal development. The understanding that emotions serve as indicators rather than instructions. This distinction completely transforms your relationship with your internal experience. What I've discovered through years of observing high achievers is that a crucial boundary exists between recognizing emotions and automatically following them. Think of emotions as your dashboard indicators. They provide valuable information about your current state, but shouldn't dictate your direction. Fear indicates potential threat, but doesn't necessarily mean retreat. Is required. Resistance indicates challenge, but doesn't mandate avoidance. Discomfort signals unfamiliarity, but doesn't require immediate relief. The enlightenment comes when you learn to interpret these signals without being controlled by them. The disciplined mind develops a fascinating relationship with emotional data. It acknowledges the information while maintaining decision-making authority. Contrast this with the undisciplined mind that obeys emotional signals without question, treating every internal sensation as a command rather than information. This fundamental difference explains why some people maintain remarkable consistency while others live in perpetual reaction. What's particularly illuminating about this approach is how it creates stability amidst life's inevitable chaos. Your mission, values, and purpose remain constant while emotions naturally fluctuate. This stability becomes your North Star, providing direction regardless of emotional weather. The disciplined individual doesn't deny emotional storms, but recognizes their temporary conditions. not permanent realities. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most sobering reality I've observed. Throughout history, countless talented individuals have seen their potential destroyed, not by external obstacles, but by unmanaged emotions. Their downfall wasn't lack of ability, but lack of emotional regulation. Anger they couldn't contain, fear they couldn't overcome, or pleasure they couldn't resist. The revelation that transformed my understanding was recognizing that raw talent, intelligence, or opportunity mean surprisingly little without the emotional regulation necessary to channel them productively. Emotion without direction becomes a destructive force rather than a creative one. It's like fire, immensely useful when controlled, catastrophically destructive when unrestrained. This metaphor of fire perfectly captures the dual nature of our emotional landscape. Fire contained in a fireplace provides warmth, light, and comfort. That same fire, uncontained, destroys everything in its path. Your emotional energy follows this exact pattern. Properly channeled, it fuels achievement, creativity, and connection. Unmanaged, it consumes relationships, opportunities, and potential. The journey toward mastery isn't about eliminating the fire of emotion, but about becoming a skilled conductor of its energy. It's about developing the capacity to direct emotional intensity toward meaningful objectives, rather than allowing it to scatter in reactive patterns. This capacity creates a unique form of freedom, not freedom from emotion, but freedom through emotion, where even challenging feelings become fuel for your journey. If this distinction between using emotions as indicators rather than instructions resonates with your experience, write "emotions inform me" in the comments. Now let's explore how this emotional literacy creates something even more valuable, a unique type of wealth that can never be taken from you. This emotional literacy creates a profound form of wealth that few ever develop, the ability to recognize and reject one of the most dangerous forces in personal development: excuses. What makes excuses particularly dangerous is their appearance of reasonability. They don't present as obvious saboteurs of your progress, but as intelligent, justifiable assessments of your situation. They wear the mask of logic while concealing their true nature as manifestations of fear, laziness, or self-deception. Think about the last time you abandoned an important commitment. The reason likely sounded perfectly reasonable: "I'm too busy right now," or "I need more resources before I start," or "the timing isn't quite right." These statements feel legitimate in the moment, but they represent a sophisticated form of self-deception. The longer you accept these disguised lies, the weaker your resolve becomes and the further you drift from your potential. The revelation that transformed my perspective was recognizing that excuses aren't random thoughts, but sophisticated defense mechanisms designed to protect you from potential discomfort, failure, or judgment. They're your mind's attempt to justify inaction while preserving your self-image. What makes them so seductive is that they provide immediate relief, a form of psychological comfort that feels momentarily satisfying but ultimately undermines your growth. Excuses create an illusion of wisdom. They make you feel prudent for delaying action, reasonable for avoiding risk, and rational for maintaining the status quo. This illusion is perhaps their most dangerous quality. They don't feel like surrender, but like sound judgment. They don't present as weakness, but as pragmatism. This disguise allows them to operate unchallenged, quietly dismantling your aspirations while appearing to protect your interests. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most fundamental misconception in personal development: the idea that safety and success can coexist. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that excuses provide temporary emotional relief by releasing you from difficult commitments. They offer permission to avoid discomfort, delay effort, and remain in familiar territory. However, this safety is fundamentally incompatible with meaningful growth. The mindset shift occurs when you recognize that security and significant achievement exist in opposing dimensions. Every remarkable accomplishment throughout history required venturing beyond the boundaries of comfort, certainty, and established capability. The journey toward extraordinary results demands releasing the very safety mechanisms that excuses attempt to preserve. This perspective illuminates why logical justifications, however compelling they might sound, never produce meaningful achievement. Results emerge exclusively from consistent action, taken despite obstacles, uncertainties, and limitations. The blueprint for exceptional results isn't found in increasingly sophisticated explanations, but in increasingly committed implementation. The transformation begins when you develop the capacity to recognize excuses not as legitimate reasons, but as invitations to surrender. You start catching them in real time, noticing how they arise precisely when you approach meaningful challenge or opportunity. You develop what I call excuse awareness, the ability to identify these patterns of self-deception before they hijack your progress. If you've started noticing these patterns of self-justification in your own life, these moments where reasonable-sounding excuses attempt to derail your progress, write "no more excuses" in the comments. Now, let's explore how developing the courage to call yourself out creates something even more valuable: the ability to take full responsibility for your results. Developing the courage to call yourself out creates a transformational capability that few ever master: ruthless self-honesty. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that genuine progress begins when you develop the capacity to recognize and challenge your own excuses in real time. This isn't an occasional practice, but a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own thoughts. When your mind suggests delay, you identify it immediately. That's an excuse. When it claims you've done enough for today, you recognize it clearly. That's comfort speaking. When it offers seemingly logical reasons to postpone difficult work, you call it out directly. That's fear disguised as wisdom. This capacity for immediate recognition prevents excuses from taking root in your decision-making process. What's particularly fascinating about this journey is discovering that ruthless self-honesty isn't a form of harsh self-criticism, but actually the foundation of genuine self-respect. It's the recognition that you deserve better than the limitations created by your own self-deception. It's the understanding that the highest form of self-care isn't comfortable lies, but uncomfortable truth. This mindset revolution occurs when you stop treating yourself as someone who needs protection from reality and start treating yourself as someone capable of facing it directly. You develop what I call radical self-candor, the willingness to tell yourself the truth regardless of how uncomfortable it might initially feel. This candor creates clarity where confusion previously reigned, replacing uncertainty with decisive action. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the single most effective strategy for overcoming the endless cycle of excuses and procrastination. What I've discovered is that the most powerful way to defeat excuses isn't through elaborate debate, psychological analysis, or motivational techniques. It's through immediate action, often before your mind has fully processed what's happening. The revelation that transformed my approach was recognizing that excuses lose their persuasive power the moment you begin moving. It's as if they require stillness and contemplation to maintain their influence. Once physical momentum begins, once you take that first step, write that first sentence, make that first call, mental resistance diminishes in proportion to your activity. Action creates a momentum that silences the very excuses that initially prevented it. This insight illuminates the fatal flaw in most people's approach to achievement: waiting for perfect logic, complete clarity, or total confidence before acting. This waiting ensures perpetual inaction because these conditions rarely arrive unprompted. The enlightened approach inverts this equation entirely. You don't wait for clarity before acting. You create clarity through action. What emerges from this practice is a fascinating discovery. Motivation doesn't precede action, it follows it. Confidence doesn't come before beginning, it emerges through the process of doing. Clarity doesn't arrive while contemplating, it manifests while creating. This realization frees you from the paralysis of waiting for optimal internal states before making external progress. Behind the scenes of every remarkable achievement lies this hidden truth: action precedes emotional alignment. The disciplined individual doesn't wait to feel ready before starting. They start precisely to generate the feeling of readiness. They understand that direction creates clarity, movement creates motivation, and progress creates confidence. If you've experienced this transformative dynamic, this understanding that action must come before the feelings that supposedly precede it, write "action first" in the comments. Now, let's explore how this action-oriented approach creates something even more valuable: the understanding that success demands repetition, not inspiration. This consistent repetition creates something truly remarkable. It doesn't just produce external results, but fundamentally rewires your brain at the neurological level. What I've discovered through studying both neuroscience and high achievers is that repetition isn't merely about completing tasks. It's about creating lasting structural changes in your mind. Each time you repeat an action with focused intention, you're physically restructuring neural pathways, reinforcing connections that make those actions increasingly automatic. Think about this profound transformation. The consistent practice that initially feels forced and uncomfortable gradually becomes your default operating system. What once required immense willpower eventually requires almost none. This neural restructuring explains why those who persist through the difficult early phases of any discipline eventually experience a form of momentum that the undisciplined never access. The enlightenment comes when you recognize that every skill, craft, and empire throughout history was built through this process of neural rewiring. From the artist who developed extraordinary technique to the entrepreneur who built a business empire, none achieved their results through sporadic bursts of inspired effort, but through consistent repetition that literally reshaped their brains. What's particularly fascinating about this neurological transformation is how it establishes rhythms and patterns that transcend fluctuating moods. The disciplined brain develops the capacity to function at high levels, regardless of emotional state. Not because emotions disappear, but because the neural pathways for execution become so established that they operate independently of feeling. This autonomy creates a form of freedom that most never experience. Behind the scenes of every remarkable achievement lies this hidden architecture. Not just external actions, but internal restructuring. The repetition that appears mundane on the surface is actually performing revolutionary work at the neural level, creating a mind that automatically gravitates toward productive action rather than requiring constant conscious effort to stay on track. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most crucial bridge in personal development: the connection between desire and destiny. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that desire alone, however intense, proves insufficient for meaningful achievement. Desire provides essential direction and initial energy, But without the restraining power of self-control, that energy burns chaotically rather than purposefully. This insight illuminates the fundamental difference between wishing for success and actually achieving it. The undisciplined person experiences intense desire but lacks the self-control necessary to channel that desire toward consistent action. Their ambition flares brilliantly but burns erratically, creating moments of progress followed by lengthy periods of regression. The disciplined person, however, harnesses desire through the focusing lens of self-control, directing that energy with precision toward specific objectives. The journey toward extraordinary achievement demands mastering the art of impulse control, the ability to say no to immediate gratification for the sake of greater future rewards. This capacity creates a form of delayed satisfaction that becomes the foundation for every meaningful accomplishment. The willingness to sacrifice present comfort for future capability separates those who merely dream from those who actually achieve. What emerges from developing this bridge between desire and destiny is a remarkable form of internal congruence. Your actions finally align with your aspirations, creating a sense of integrity that generates immense psychological satisfaction. The gap between what you say you want and what you actually do, a gap that creates profound dissatisfaction for most people, begins to close through this practice of disciplined self-control. If you've experienced this connection between consistent repetition and internal transformation, this rewiring of your brain through disciplined practice, write "rewiring my mind" in the comments. Now, let's explore how this self-control represents not restriction, but the purest form of personal power you can possibly develop. This self-control represents something truly profound, not a form of restriction as most perceive it, but power in its purest, most concentrated form. What I've discovered through studying extraordinary achievers is that, contrary to popular belief, self-control isn't about diminishing your experience, but about directing it with precision. It represents the rare ability to act from purpose rather than emotion, to delay immediate pleasure. For future dominance, to choose the meaningful over the momentary. Think about this remarkable capacity. In a world where most people are constantly pulled by whatever emotion, distraction, or temptation presents itself most loudly, the disciplined individual maintains a clear direction regardless of these influences. This isn't weakness, but a form of sovereignty that creates an unshakable foundation for every other achievement. It's the invisible strength that carries you across the vast gap, separating what you currently want from what you're ultimately destined to become. The revelation that transformed my entire understanding was recognizing that freedom doesn't come from indulging every impulse, but from the ability to direct those impulses toward purposeful ends. The undisciplined person experiences the illusion of freedom, the momentary pleasure of doing whatever feels good in the moment, while actually living in profound bondage to their own fluctuating desires. The disciplined person experiences the authentic freedom that comes from self-direction, from internal congruence, from the alignment between purpose and action. Behind the scenes of every remarkable transformation lies this hidden architecture, not external force, but internal command. The capacity to override momentary desire for enduring purpose represents the most advanced expression of human capability. It's the quality that separates those who remain perpetually in potential from those who actually manifest that potential in tangible form. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most sobering reality of personal development. Every weakness tolerated today inevitably becomes future regret. What I've observed through studying both extraordinary achievement and profound disappointment is that each flaw excused, each bad habit ignored, each compromise with mediocrity eventually transforms into something far more painful than momentary discomfort. It becomes lasting regret. The enlightenment comes when you recognize that weakness doesn't typically destroy potential in dramatic, obvious moments, but through gradual, almost imperceptible erosion. It whispers, "It's fine," or "just this once," or "it doesn't really matter," while steadily diminishing capability day by day, choice by choice. What seems inconsequential in isolation becomes limiting in accumulation, creating boundaries to your achievement that appear fixed, but were actually self-constructed through tolerance of small weaknesses. This perspective illuminates why the disciplined individual appears almost ruthless with themselves, not from self-hatred, but from profound self-respect. They recognize the deceptive nature of weakness, how it presents as harmless in the moment while silently undermining future capability. They understand that what feels like harshness in the moment, refusing to tolerate mediocrity, laziness, or inconsistency, actually represents the highest form of self-compassion when viewed through the lens of future possibility. The mindset shift occurs when you begin treating small compromises not as isolated incidents, but as character-defining moments. You recognize that each surrender to weakness isn't just about that particular instance, but about reinforcing neural pathways that make future surrenders increasingly likely. Conversely, each victory over weakness doesn't just address that specific challenge, but strengthens the internal architecture that makes future victories increasingly probable. If you've recognized this pattern in your own journey, how seemingly small compromises eventually create significant limitations, write "no more tolerance" in the comments. Now, let's explore the fascinating relationship between weakness and identity, and how what begins as behavior can eventually become who you believe yourself to be. This fascinating relationship between weakness and identity reveals perhaps the most deceptive aspect of personal development. Weakness doesn't just undermine your progress, it disguises itself as wisdom. What I've discovered through studying both extraordinary achievers and those who remain perpetually in potential is that the most dangerous weaknesses aren't those you recognize as flaws, but those you've learned to justify through seemingly reasonable explanations. These disguised weaknesses often hide behind sophisticated phrases that sound intelligent, but actually rationalize. Limitation. "I work better under pressure," a clever mask for procrastination. "I'm resting," often a disguise for avoidance. Or, "I need balance," frequently a justification for lack of discipline. What makes these particularly dangerous is how they create the illusion of sound judgment while actually undermining progress. The revelation that transformed my perspective was recognizing how weakness evolves through a predictable pattern. It begins as an occasional behavior, transforms into a habit through repetition, and eventually becomes integrated into identity. This is just who I am. Once weakness achieves this status, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to overcome because challenging it feels like challenging your fundamental self rather than merely changing a behavior. What's particularly illuminating about this journey is witnessing how weakness doesn't just affect your results, but infiltrates your decision-making architecture. It creates an elaborate system of self-deception where limitations appear as reasonable choices, surrender seems like wisdom, and mediocrity feels like an enlightened position. This sophisticated disguise allows weakness to operate unchallenged, quietly dismantling potential while appearing to protect your interests. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most profound blueprint for personal transformation. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that true growth occurs precisely when you confront and overcome the weaknesses you previously accepted. This confrontation represents the essential catalyst for metamorphosis, the moment when tolerance transforms into resistance. Each time you push beyond comfortable limitations, when you persist despite fatigue, continue despite doubt, or maintain standards despite temptation, strength develops not gradually but exponentially. Every fulfilled commitment builds integrity. Every conquered excuse reinforces resolve. The continual refusal to surrender to weakness eventually transforms into something far more significant than merely improved behavior. It becomes defining personal power. This insight illuminates the evolutionary path of personal development. Weakness must be confronted before it can be transformed. The undisciplined person attempts to build strength while simultaneously tolerating weakness, creating a fundamental contradiction that ensures limited and progress. The disciplined person recognizes that strength emerges specifically through confronting what was previously tolerated, through directly challenging the limitations that have become comfortable through familiarity. The mindset revolution occurs when you stop seeing discipline as adding something new to your life and start recognizing it as removing what's been limiting you all along. You begin identifying the invisible boundaries you've accepted, the self-imposed limitations, disguised as reasonable assessments of your capacity, and systematically challenging each one through deliberate action. What emerges from this practice is a fascinating paradox. As you confront long-tolerated weakness, you discover that your perceived limitations were largely fictional constructs rather than genuine boundaries. Areas where you believed yourself fundamentally limited reveal untapped reservoirs of capability once you approach them with disciplined persistence rather than reflexive avoidance. If you've experienced this profound shift, this recognition that your greatest strength emerges specifically by confronting what you've previously tolerated, write "confronting my limits" in the comments. Now, let's explore the ultimate choice that shapes every aspect of your development, the decision between temporary pain now or permanent limitation later. This ultimate choice reveals what might be the single most clarifying principle in personal development. Pain is temporary, but weakness, if accepted, becomes permanent. What I've discovered through both personal experience and studying extraordinary achievers is that life presents a fundamental decision point that most people never consciously recognize. You can either embrace temporary discomfort now or accept permanent limitation later. There is no third option. The disciplined individual chooses temporary pain, the discomfort of early mornings, challenging workouts, difficult conversations, and sustained focus. This pain creates momentary unpleasantness but builds lasting capability. It strengthens rather than diminishes, expands rather than restricts, liberates rather than confines. The decision to embrace this temporary discomfort represents perhaps the most profound investment you can make, sacrificing momentary ease for permanent empowerment. Conversely, accepting weakness offers immediate relief. The comfort of sleeping in, avoiding difficult work, postponing challenging conversations, and surrendering to distraction. This relief feels satisfying in the moment, but establishes constraints that eventually become permanent. What begins as occasional compromise gradually solidifies into fixed limitation, creating boundaries that appear insurmountable precisely because they've been reinforced through repeated surrender. The revelation that transformed my perspective was recognizing that this single principle separates the exceptional from the ordinary more reliably than talent, opportunity, or circumstance. The exceptional individual isn't free from pain. They simply choose its timing and nature rather than having it imposed upon them later in forms they cannot control. They select the productive pain of discipline over the destructive pain of regret. What's particularly illuminating about this journey is witnessing how temporary pain, embraced consistently, creates a remarkable psychological transformation. The mind initially interprets discipline as punishment, but eventually recognizes it as purification, a necessary process for removing what limits your potential. The relationship with discomfort fundamentally changes from something to be avoided at all costs to something to be strategically embraced for specific purposes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing what might be the most profound battlefield you'll ever encounter. What I've discovered through studying extraordinary achievement is that the ultimate conquest isn't external, but internal. The greatest victory isn't over competitors, circumstances, or challenges, but over yourself. The silent struggle between discipline and desire, focus and distraction, strength and weakness. Those who master themselves develop something remarkable, not invulnerability to challenge, but resilience that renders challenges temporary rather than defining. They become unstoppable, not because circumstances never oppose them, but because they've developed the internal resources to overcome anything. They've built what I call internal sovereignty, the ability to maintain direction regardless of external conditions. Behind the scenes of every extraordinary life lies this hidden truth. External success merely reflects internal victory. The individual who conquers themselves, who establishes command over their thoughts, emotions, and actions, inevitably conquers their domain, not through force or manipulation, but through the natural authority that emerges from genuine self-mastery. The transformation begins when you recognize that the most important command you'll ever issue isn't to others, but to yourself. It's the daily directive to rise when comfortable, focus when distracted, persist when challenged, and excel when mediocrity would suffice. This self-command, practiced consistently, creates an internal foundation that external circumstances cannot easily disturb. If you've experienced this fundamental shift in understanding, this recognition that temporary pain builds lasting strength, while temporary comfort creates permanent limitation. Write, "Pain builds power," in the comments. Now let's explore how this journey of self-mastery creates not just achievement, but something far more valuable, a profound form of freedom that most never experience. This journey of self-mastery ultimately creates something far more valuable than mere achievement. It creates a profound freedom that most never experience. The person who conquers themselves gains sovereignty not just over their actions, but over their entire experience of life. They develop the rare ability to choose their direction regardless of circumstances, to maintain purpose regardless of challenges, and to create meaning regardless of conditions. If you've resonated with what we've explored today, if something within you recognized these truths about discipline, self-mastery, and the power of consistent action, then this message was meant specifically for you. The very fact that you've stayed with me until this point reveals something significant about your potential and your readiness for transformation. I'd love to continue this journey with you. If this conversation has sparked something in your spirit, consider subscribing to join our community of individuals committed to extraordinary growth. Each week, we explore these transformative principles in ways that create lasting change rather than momentary inspiration. The insights we've shared today represent just the beginning of what's possible when you embrace discipline as the foundation of achievement rather than an occasional practice. If you found value in today's exploration, a simple like helps others discover these same principles. I'm genuinely curious about which aspect of discipline resonates most deeply with you. If you've made it to the end of our time together today, write "Master of Self" in the comments. I read each one personally and find tremendous value in understanding your unique journey. There's a video right here that takes these principles of discipline to the next level, focusing specifically on how to maintain consistency during the inevitable challenges that arise on any meaningful path. Click and continue with me there as we deepen this exploration together.